To the February 24th, 2021 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. I am Candace Breyer, Chairperson of the Zoning Board of Appeals. This meeting is being held electronically to protect public health and safety due to the COVID-19 virus and to comply with orders issued by the Governor, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and/or the Washtenaw County Health Department. We intend to conduct this meeting similarly to an in-person meeting. However, please be patient if there are technical issues. The Zoning Board of Appeals is a 9-person volunteer board nominated by the mayor and approved by City Council. First, we will hear from Planning Services, represented by John Barrett. Then the applicant or their representative will make their presentation. Applicants will have 5 minutes in which to make their presentation. Staff will keep time and will announce when 30 seconds are remaining. We may ask questions of either the city or the applicant. We will acknowledge any written comments received by the board. We will allow an appearing party to express their support or objections. Public comment will be via telephone only. To speak during any of the public comment periods, please call 206-337-9723 or toll free 888-788-0099 and enter meeting ID 938-1648-1007. This information is also available on the published agenda, in the public notices section of the city website, and on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN Channel 16, AT&T Channel 99, and online at www.a2gov.org/watchctn. You need not have signed up in advance. In order to be called on to speak, callers must press star 9 to raise their hand. Callers will then be called upon by city staff one by one using the last 3 numbers of their phone number. Upon being called on, callers will hear an audible announcement that the host is allowing them to speak. We ask that callers start by stating their name and address and speak from a quiet place and mute any background noise such as television so that we can hear you directly. City staff will announce when callers have 30 seconds left of their 3-minute comment period. After 3 minutes, they will be placed on mute so that we can proceed to the next speaker. The board will discuss the appeal and formulate a motion to approve the appeal. 5 affirmative votes of the board will be required for an appeal to be granted. Finally, any qualified party who is aggrieved by a decision of the board can appeal that decision to the Washtenaw County Circuit Court on a timely basis. Roll call. I am here. Mike Daniel.
Here.
Dave DeVarty.
DeVarty here.
Chris Fraley.
Here.
Nicole Eisenman.
Here.
Todd Grant.
Here.
Elizabeth Nelson.
Here.
Charlotte Williams.
Here.
Julia Good.
Here.
We have a quorum. Moving on to approval of the agenda. Are there any comments or concerns about the agenda? If not, do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Motion from Mike, support from Elizabeth. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on to approval of minutes. We received minutes from the January 27th, 2021 ZBA meeting. Are there any comments or corrections to those minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve the January meeting minutes? Motion from Chris, support from Charlotte. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Moving on to public hearings, we have petition ZBA 21-001-909 Duncan Street. John?
Okay, first petition before us this evening is 909 Duncan Street. I'm John Barrett, zoning coordinator for the city of Ann Arbor. Matthew Robbins of Robbins Construction, representing the property owner, is requesting relief from section 5.32.2, alteration to a non-conforming structure. A second-story addition is being constructed that will add 3 bedrooms and a bathroom to the existing single-story residence. The home is non-conforming as it does not meet the required average front setback. The proposed construction will not encroach further into any of the required setbacks. The property is zoned R1D, single-family residential. The residence was built in 1951 and is approximately 1,200 square feet in size. The property is located south of Miller Avenue in the Arbor View neighborhood. The home is non-conforming as it does not meet the 29-foot required average front setback along Duncan Street. The home is approximately 20 feet from the front lot line. A building permit application was submitted on December 18th, 2020, after a stop work order was issued by the building department on December 7th, 2020. Can everybody see my screen? If you can't, let me know. The first slide is the zoning map. You see the highlighted subject property in the center, just south of Miller Avenue, just east of Hazley Elementary School. The next slide is the location map showing surrounding properties and existing conditions. The next slide is the zoomed in aerial photo. You see the subject property, and the applicants are proposing to put a second story addition right on the existing first story, single story house. The next slide is the survey that was submitted with the application that also verified that the property does not meet the average front setback. The next slide is a site plan that was submitted with the application showing the basically the addition that's going right on top of the existing foundation, the existing structure. This is the interior layout of the second floor. You see the bathroom and 3 bedrooms. The next slide is a cross section that was submitted with the application, just showing some of the construction and the cross section of the proposed construction. Next slide is the elevation, showing the front elevation of what the proposed addition is going to look like. Following slides are more elevations. This is the side yard facing elevation. Next slide shows the rear yard facing elevation. The next slide shows another side yard towards, this is the driveway side. The next slide shows the subject property on the top, and the bottom photo is the neighbor directly to the south at 907 Duncan Street. The next slide is the 901 Duncan Street, 2 neighbors to the south, and 915 Duncan Street, 1 neighbor to the north. And the next slide is 921 Duncan Street, 2 neighbors to the north. These are photos that were submitted with the application showing properties in the neighborhood that also have second stories. The next slides are the slides that are the photos that I took on my inspection. You can see the existing conditions. This shows the driveway. This is just another perspective of the existing conditions and the house itself. This is the relationship to the subject property and the neighbors to the south. That concludes my presentation, and I can answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you, John. Are there any questions for staff? No? Oh, yep, Julia, go ahead.
So I'm just a little confused about the stop work order, and if they didn't have a permit. I mean, because they're asking for us for a variance to do a second floor, but they've already built the second floor.
Well, it's not a variance, and it's an alteration, because if it was a variance, they'd be encroaching further into the setbacks, but they're just going straight up. The construction is not complete. It was halted partially through the construction, and I believe the building department's allowed them to wrap the house to protect it from the winter elements right now while this hearing was to take place. And then if this is approved, then they get their building permits hopefully reviewed and issued in a timely fashion, and then they'll be able to commence construction.
Okay, So nothing's been done so out of order that it should change how we're viewing it?
No, it's just, you should just review the application and the petition before us tonight based on whether you think that it meets the qualifications for an alteration. And that's basically if it doesn't have any impacts on surrounding properties. But they're kind of two separate issues. They did start construction prior to getting the building permit issued, which was essentially halted.
Okay.
Elizabeth, did you have a question? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question, and I'm remembering back a couple of years, as these standards were explained to me, there's the setback that's in the zoning, and then there's the average front setback. The average front setback is 29 feet. Is there another figure that's the
No.
required setback for? No? Oh, okay.
The average
Maybe I
front
misunderstood something.
Well, the average front setback takes precedence.
Oh, okay.
There's the district, and that's generally for new construction and site plan projects. And then there's the average front setback for existing conditions. And this is an existing condition, and that 5.18.5 takes precedence.
Okay. Do we know if any of the houses around particularly the ones that have the second story on them, like, did they have this issue of 29 feet of violating or being short of the 29 feet average front setback?
Well, those homes were in the neighborhood, but they weren't. They were on Bruce Street, and they weren't involved in this equation because it's the only properties that are adjacent to the north or south or east or west, whatever is applicable. In this case, it's the north-south, two properties in the north and two to the west or to the south. And this property, the subject property, is more forward than the other properties.
What's the setback for the adjacent properties?
The average is 29 feet.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. All right, thanks.
Dave, go ahead.
John, I have two questions. First, what is the setback for this zoning district, separate from the, notwithstanding the average
25 feet.
25 feet?
Correct.
So the averaging actually sets it back further than what the normal requirement would be
Correct.
for this zoning district. Okay. I think that's relevant to my decision anyway.
That's what I was trying to ask.
The other question I have, in these sorts of situations where people begin construction without permits, are there any, what sorts of, I don't want to, maybe it's just penalties, or what sorts of penalties or fees or whatever, separate from tearing it all down, does the city have? Is there anything that the city has ever put in for these sorts of situations?
The building permit fees, I believe, are going to be doubled in this case.
So it'll double the building permit fee.
I believe so, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for John? All right, if the petitioner is ready, you can begin your presentation. You'll have 5 minutes.
Everyone, Matthew Robbins here. How you doing this evening?
Good.
Good. Thanks for taking the time to look this over. John, good presentation. I think that was quite thorough. The one thing that I didn't hear brought up so far is the letters of support that we've garnered from neighbors. Has everybody had a chance to review those? Okay. To my knowledge, there's 12 letters of support, correct?
Yeah, Matthew, the chairperson will bring that up after the prior to the meeting, this hearing getting closed.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure what the process there was.
Yeah, we'll cover that.
Okay. Yeah, really good job on the presentation. I think that based on the questions that have been asked, the only thing that I'll bring up here is that when we initially designed the project, we referred to the 25-foot front setback rule. And since the house measures at 26 foot 7 inches, it seemed like it was a shoo-in for approval for zoning and then subsequently for building permits. So that's why the project started somewhat out of order. Taking into consideration the average setback is the only thing that propagated the need for requesting this relief. I don't think I have much more to say. The proposed construction is not going to encroach further into the required setbacks, and pretty much everybody in the surrounding homes supports this project. Does anybody have any questions for me?
All right, thanks. Any questions for Mr. Robbins? All right, thank you very much. If there is anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this petition, please call in now and raise your hand. If you have already called in, please raise your hand and wait to be called on. You'll have 3 minutes to speak.
No callers.
Thank you, Kristen. I will say that, as was noted before, we did receive 12 letters of support from neighboring properties regarding this project. So we have a letter of support from Paul and Caitlin Hopkins at 915 Duncan Street, from Susan Kemble at 817 Duncan Street, from Justine Gaidash, I believe. I apologize in advance if I mispronounce anyone's name. Laura Meister at 818 Duncan Street, Adrian and Thomas Brady at 822 Duncan Street, Matthew Sturm and Karen Craven at 921 Duncan Street, Pamela Craven at 925 Duncan Street, Emily and Calvin Wilson at 1001 Duncan Street, Robin Schultz Purves and Will Purves, Rachel and Ben at 920 Duncan Street, John Squires at 916 Duncan Street, David Hyatt, and what is this one from 837 Duncan Street? Bob Hospodarek. With that said, we are in discussion. Todd.
Yes, I will be voting for this. One, as John said, and the applicant repeated, it's not encroaching any further into the setback. It's being built straight up. And number two, the only criterion we have, is this going to have a negative influence on the neighborhood? No. And I would note that there are already other homes with a second story. So for me, this is an easy yes.
Thank you, Todd. Any other discussion? If not, are we ready for a motion? Dave?
Where are we? Okay, the Zoning Board of Appeals, or ZBA 21-001, 909 Duncan Street, alteration to a non-conforming structure. The Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants relief from Section 532(2), alteration to a non-conforming structure to allow a second-story addition to the existing residence that will add 3 bedrooms and a bathroom. The new construction will not encroach any further into any of the required setbacks.
Thank you, Dave. We have a motion. Do we have support? Support from Charlotte. All right. Charlotte.
Yes.
Dave.
DeVarty, yes.
Chris.
Really, yes.
Julia.
Yes.
Nicole.
Yes.
Elizabeth.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Todd.
Yes.
I also vote yes. The request is granted. Moving on to petition ZBA 21-002, 801 Amherst Avenue. John?
ZBA 21-002, Amherst, 801 Amherst Avenue. R. Thomas Bray and Jerry Hollister, property owners, are seeking variances from sections 5.1910, subsection D, driveways, and section 5.19.A, 8A, design of vehicle parking facilities. The applicants are proposing a new curb cut and driveway along Amherst Avenue and are requesting to allow the existing curb cut on Chandler Road to remain and not be closed. The property is zoned R1C Single Family Residential. The subject property is located on the northeast corner of Chandler and Amherst Avenue in the North Side neighborhood. The home was built in 1937 and is approximately 1,284 square feet in size. The owners are proposing to construct a new 470 square foot detached garage in the northeast corner of the rear yard. The garage will replace an existing shed. The existing attached garage has been converted to habitable space for an artist studio and workshop. The garage conversion has created vehicle parking in the front yard, which is prohibited by the Unified Development Code. Everyone see my screen? If you can't, let me know. The first slide is the zoning map. You see the subject property highlighted in yellow, and its Plymouth Road is to the south and southeast, and you see the Huron River. The next slide is the location map showing existing conditions and surrounding neighborhood. The next slide is the zoomed in aerial photo, and you see the existing driveway and garage area right here off Chandler, and the applicant is proposing a new curb cut, and they're going to put a new detached garage in the back corner right here. This is the survey that was submitted with the application. And this is the site plan. You see the existing driveway showing off Chandler, and the garage has now been created into or converted into habitable space, so the garage is no longer usable, creating this parking area right here, which is not allowed from the front elevation to the property line. You have to have a legal parking space, as you see in my two highlighted sections of code on the staff report. And you see the proposed driveway and the new garage in the rear of the lot. The next slides are the photos that I took on my inspection. See the subject property, and you see the existing garage and the driveway and the parking condition as it currently exists. Just another angle of the same photo. This is taken on the Amherst side. You see the front elevation, the front door, and then their side door here. This is the proposed location. You see the existing shed and where the new driveway is being proposed off of Amherst. And just a relationship between the driveway curb cut, the shed, the garage, and the adjacent property owner. That concludes my staff report, and I will take any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you, John. Nicole?
So just to understand, to remove the curb cut is just basically infilling the portion of the kind of apron at the bottom of the driveway? No other work on the driveway itself?
Or the Chandler side?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be required to be removed from the sidewalk to the apron into the street right away. That would be required to be removed.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for John?
I just wanted to bring something up real quick. I started putting the sections and highlighting them on your staff reports. I'm not sure if that helps everybody. So you no longer have to dig through your ordinance, your UDC to find that stuff. So I'm getting a thumbs up from a couple people. So I guess I will continue to do that.
So I've got a question.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
go ahead, Dave.
So if we approve this variance, the curb cut on Chandler stays and they add one on Amherst.
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions for John? All right, if the petitioner is ready, you may begin your presentation. You'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Hi.
We don't have a lot more to add to what's in our application. We've lived here for 40 years and we're getting older. We want to add a garage, and that's the only way we can add it. The curb cut off Chandler, leaving that for us will continue to let us access the space to move heavy materials in and out. And I think leaving it and adding the new driveway is really not going to change the character of the neighborhood in any significant way at all. We didn't know we could have letters of support, but anecdotally, our neighbors have thought, great, good for you, you're getting a garage. In particular, the person next door, who would impact the most, says it's not going to be much different to him than the shed that's back there, and he's happy to help us out. So that's about it. Any questions for us?
All right, thank you very much. Any questions for the petitioner? Dave, yes.
I have to admit, I do know Ms. Hollister as a noted sculptor in the community. That driveway, I'm guessing, is already used to move sculpting materials for your sculpture work for the art studio in and out.
Right.
So would it be a hardship to remove that?
It would be a hardship. So not only do I use it to move materials in and out, but when I do shows, I have my pedestal storage, my displays, and my work will be moved in and out of that space. And so it would be a hardship to not have the driveway there.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioners? All right, thank you very much. If there is anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this petition, please call in now and raise your hand. If you've already called in, please raise your hand, wait to be called on by staff. While we wait, I will note we did receive one letter of support. That letter came from David Mishner at 1622 Pontiac Trail.
No callers.
All right, thank you, Kristen. We are in discussion. Dave.
This is one where it's clear to me that the hardship will exist if we force them to remove the existing curb cut because of the type of work that happens in that studio. It's sculpting work. And so I'm comfortable with the benefit of moving the garage into the back off of Amherst will actually improve the situation by bringing the vehicle, which is right now parked in a setback or within this front setback, will bring it back into the rear where it should be. So I see this as an improvement to the existing situation, at the same time recognizing the hardship of the required access to the studio space there. I'll be supporting this variance.
Todd, yes.
Building on what Dave said, I think this is not the situation where there are two curb cuts on the same street, on the same side of the property. But as the applicant and the report both noted, the curb cuts are at opposite ends of the property and on two different streets. So an objection to a second curb cut might be that they might somehow interfere with each other, but they're not. This is not the case. So I'll be voting yes for this as well.
Nicole?
I'd just like to say this is actually my neighborhood. I've never met the applicants before, so hello. And I'm familiar with this property, and I feel like I've rarely if ever have seen a car parked in that area. I do want to note too, in this neighborhood, there seems to have been a phenomenon at one point where a lot of garages were converted into living space, and that predates my 10 years of living in this house. So it's really not that unique of a situation in our neighborhood. These petitioners are, I guess, maybe more fortunate that they live on a corner where they can have a second curb cut put there. I think I just wanted to note that, and I think I will be a support of this as well. I think if it's minimally impacting the adjacent neighbor, it shouldn't be an issue.
Thanks, Nicole. Julia, did you have a comment? Yeah.
So I generally am concerned about adding curb cuts, and there are lots of stats about how they do change the neighborhood, even though it seems like it's not going to be a big deal, particularly when it's on a corner. There's lots of stats about little kids riding bikes and they turn the corner and they've paused for one driveway and it doesn't occur that there's another driveway, so that there are always, perhaps minimal in that neighborhood, but there are some added risks with adding curb cuts. And I understand why they have the need in their current situation, but this is going to be there forever and will outlast them. So I also have a concern about granting the additional curb cut when there's, in all likelihood, going to be new people there at, some point in the future. And may use it as they might become a family with 4 cars that's constantly using those driveways. We don't know what the new people are going to look like.
Thank you, Julia. Any other comments or questions? If not, are we ready for a motion?
I could make a motion.
Dave, thank you.
ZBA 21002, 801 Amherst Avenue. Based on the following finding, that allowing the variance will result in substantial justice being done, considering the public benefits of the zoning ordinance, the practical difficulties that will be suffered by a failure to grant the variance, and the rights of others whose property would be affected by allowing the variance. And in accordance with the established standards for approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants the following variance from Chapter 55, Unified Development Code, Section 5:1910D, driveways and Section 5:19:8A, design of vehicle parking facilities. A variance to allow the existing curb cut on Chandler Road to remain open and will not require it to be closed. The permanent parking of vehicles will not take place on this driveway.
Thank you, Dave. We have a motion. Do we have support? Support from Nicole. Thank you. Mike,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
Nicole,
Yes.
I also vote yes. Julia,
No.
Charlotte,
Yes.
Chris,
I have to abstain.
and Dave.
Vardy, yes.
All right, the request is granted. Moving on to petition ZBA 21-003, 1908 Scottwood Avenue. John?
Okay. Shannon Gibb Randall of Insight Design Studio, representing the property owners, is seeking a variance from section 5.26.2 fences in order to construct stone pillars 5 feet 8 inches in height and a 3-foot 6-inch wall at 100% opacity. The maximum height of fences in front yards is 4 feet tall and 50% opacity maximum. The property is zoned R1A, single family district. The subject property is located west of Washtenaw Avenue in the Burns Park neighborhood. The area is also distinguished as a sub-neighborhood of Ives Woods. The property is currently vacant as the previous home was demolished and a new single-family home is being designed. The owners plan on the deconstruction and salvage of 52 linear feet of existing stone wall along Fair Oaks Parkway, the rear yard area, and reusing the materials to construct 69 linear feet of wall between 2 driveway cuts on Scottwood Avenue side of the property. The wall will be 3 feet 6 inches in height, and the pillars are a proposed height of 5 feet 8 inches. And before I go any further, there was a little bit of confusion, I guess, in the neighborhood. I just wanted to clarify that we don't have a stone wall ordinance. We only have a fence ordinance. So we kind of had to blend the two issues together. That's the only thing we have to distinguish a stone wall from a fence. So we have to call them basically the same thing. And so that is the ordinance we have. Stone walls are rare. This is the first time I've ever dealt with a stone wall in Ann Arbor. And so we have to classify it as a fence. So we determined that it has to meet the same standards as a fence. Can everyone see my screen? All right. The first slide is the zoning map. You see the subject property highlighted in the center. The next slide is the location map showing the surrounding properties and existing conditions. Next slide is the zoomed in aerial photo, and the home, as I said previously, has been demolished. And this is the Fair Oak side of the property on the west, and this is the Scottwood side on the east side. The next slide is the Topo Survey that was submitted with the application. This is also in your packets, and you can see a little bit better a lot of these sub photos that show the existing stone wall, and you'll see that later on in my presentation as well. The next slide is the site plan that was submitted. This is where the deconstruction of the wall is going to take place, and this salvage material is going to be used over on this side to construct a wall between the two proposed curb cuts. One's existing and it's going to be improved, and then there's going to be a second one here, and it's going to have the stone pillars and the stone wall in between this area. And it's going to, all the materials and the stone wall and all the architecture is going to match the existing stone wall that is throughout the neighborhood. Just another more detailed site plan that was submitted showing the floor plans of the proposed home. And you see the detail of the stone wall and the pillars between the two curb cuts in the lower right corner of your screen. These are the photos that I took of the property and at my inspection. You see the existing conditions, and shows some of the pillars and the stone walls they exist today. This is a photo of the interior of the site and how it currently exists. This is looking south along Scottwood. You see the existing stone wall. And this is looking north. You see the survey stakes and then the property, the adjacent property to the north. This is heading down Fair Oaks. You kind of get a feel for the neighborhood and the back of the lot and how the stone wall blends in with the rest of the neighborhood. And that's how the fence is along the neighborhood and the existing property. That's the end of my staff report, and I will take any questions at this time.
Thank you, John. Todd, go ahead.
John, a couple of questions. The interesting thing for me, the report and the applicant emphasized that the proposed stone wall will match what already exists. And I think you can verify that that's what they intend to do. Yes, they want to match the current stone walls in the area.
That's correct.
Okay. I did a second question or comment, I guess, continuing. I didn't see any large pillars. I simply see stone walls. Are there any other 5 foot 8 inch high pillars in the neighborhood?
Take that one.
There was a couple in my photos. I believe there's a couple on the subject property, and some of the neighboring properties have them. I believe the stone pillars, they're going to be an integral part of the stone wall itself. There's not going to be a whole lot of deviation.
Okay.
And I believe the applicant can speak more about that as well.
Okay. And just to be clear, I know, but to repeat, there's only going to be a new stone wall erected to look like the old one, only between the two curb cuts.
Correct.
So what happened to the rest of the stone wall? They're just not going to rebuild it and ignore it?
Oh, it's there.
It's already existing.
Oh, okay. I missed that. Okay, got you.
And
Good.
in those photos, when I showed the properties along Scottwood to the south and the north, you saw what was existing. There's only going to be a new area that's built between the two driveway curb cuts.
Good. Thanks, John. That's helpful.
It's only going to be 69 linear feet of stone wall and pillar. That's it.
Any other questions for John? Dave, go ahead.
I could ask the petitioner. So what they're asking to do is basically to have a stone wall that's no higher than the existing stone wall.
That's correct. The pillars are going to be 5 feet 8 inches, but the wall itself is only going to be 3 feet 6 inches, which is allowed to be 4 feet tall in the front yard. It just doesn't meet the opacity, and how a stone wall can't meet opacity requirements.
Right.
Chris, go ahead.
It seems to me in the L2 plan, the pillars are going to look something like what's in picture A1A, iron gate, stone wall, and pillars. That's what that next to the end of the gates is the 5 foot 8 part. The running is the 4 foot, whatever you said it is. So really that's all we're looking at, right?
I believe, yes.
Those
correct.
that's in situ right now, and it is also what is going to be the example, I guess is probably the best word to put it.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
Elizabeth, did you also have a question?
I just wanted to clarify, John, did you say 69 feet?
Correct.
69 feet of additional stone wall.
A new stone wall between those two driveway cuts. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
I think you can see that again on plan L2 below those pictures directly.
Actually, I have one more question. Did any of the existing stone wall, does any of it function even partially as a retaining wall? I couldn't tell from the pictures if it's like, I mean, it's literally on level ground, or is there any element of retention there, like any elevation difference from one side to the other?
I can let the applicants answer that, but from what I have saw, it's not holding back any earth. It's not part of a retention system. It's entirely at grade.
Okay.
Any other questions for John? All right, if the applicant is ready, you may begin your presentation. You'll have 5 minutes.
Great, thank you very much. I am Shannon Gibrando of Insight Design Studio, and we're landscape architects in Ann Arbor. John did a great job of kind of reviewing the property. I have a few things to add that I just wanted to be able to bring up as well. So not only is there over 800 lineal feet around this property, but there's other freestanding stone walls that are in this immediate vicinity as well. There's 5 other neighbors that also have the wall, and they each kind of have different flavors, but they generally all have the same kind of look and feel to them. And John, if you could go to the sheet, the first one, there's an aerial that shows the pattern of that across the neighborhood, where you can see in kind of dark gray lines in that upper right of where that stone wall shows up in the neighborhood. So despite its beauty, it's non-compliant. So we need to be able to have a variance for this. And obviously the code is there because we want to have people be able to engage and want to activate the street and things like that. But in this case, we feel like because of its kind of beautiful picturesque quality, we want to be able to keep this unique pattern language that is running through the neighborhood here. So one of the things that is driving the new driveway layout is that the original house was built in 1909 before the whole street layout in the neighborhood was set. And so the house, if you look on the survey, actually, John, that first sheet, the house faces away from the street. It faces into the side yard of the neighbor. And when it was rebuilt in 1927, they just built around that house and kept the same orientation. Well, at that point, Scotwood had been extended. And so basically what it means is that the address, 1908 Scotwood, basically shows the garage and the service side of the house. And the front is just completely facing off in a different direction. The owners really tried to work with the plan and tried to work with the existing house. They even tried to pick it up and figure out how to rotate it, but structurally it just wasn't going to work to be able to do that. And even if they had been able to turn it, we really needed to be able to rework the curb cuts in that area. Because if you go to the third sheet again, you'll see that the curb cuts are quite close. One takes a nosedive into the old garage and one went and fed the property. But now we're trying to separate them out so that it's a works with the turning radius. It works with a more with modern day cars. So what we're really trying to do is build back the wall. You can see in the two little graphics there that show the existing and the proposed. We're going to be removing a small section, and then we're reconfiguring it and kind of filling in that main area in the middle. And we feel like this particular project is very unique in particular because these stone walls are something that is really a very treasured thing in this neighborhood, and we want to be able to keep that tradition going. So failure to grant the variance basically means that we wouldn't be able to rebuild it back in the pattern that's there, and we feel like it's a real public benefit to be able to basically continue that wall and have that facade moving across the front there. We will do everything we possibly can to be able to match the mortar. We're going to be reusing all of the existing stone from the demolition that's going to be taking place. And obviously, if there's extra stones needed, there's plenty of glaciated cobble around in this area to be able to fill in. But the point is to be able to really match the character and style, height, and the piers, as somebody had asked, like at those entrances. That's how we're going to be. That's how we plan to rebuild it. So again, the point of redoing this driveways was to be able to engage the street so that the house didn't give the neighborhood the cold shoulder, which is essentially what it's been doing for a long time. So the Overhides really wanted to be able to activate that street frontage and to be able to continue that pattern language of that beautiful stone wall that runs through that area. I'm here for any questions.
Thank you. I have one quick question. Can you confirm how far back the wall is, either the existing wall or the proposed wall, from the edge of the street? Just my concern, I guess, to clarify the question, is a car pulling out of the driveway, like visibility, will they be able to see or have space to see traffic or pedestrians or bicycles or whatever else traveling down the street from the edge of the wall before they get into the street?
That's a really good question. I would have to go in and measure on a different drawing, but it is, my guess is that it's about 5 feet back, something like that, because there's a strip of lawn in between the sidewalk and the wall. So there's portions of it on the back side that are right up against the property line. But the front, there is a gap between the sidewalk and the wall before you pull out. But I think that's an important point in terms of safety. And the piers, though, are pretty far apart from each other too. So in other words, you're going to be able to kind of nose out. So yeah, that's a good photo to be able to show that right there. So looks like typical sidewalk is 5 feet. So maybe that's 4 feet-ish, 3.5 feet, something like that, I would guesstimate there. So, and there's been 2 curb cuts on this property, for a long time. So there's not necessarily going to be a change in terms of the amount of traffic coming in and out of there. And that's the current condition that's there right now, is that on each of these driveway entrances, there's these piers and people are pulling in and out of there. It's just that we're going to be kind of moving them and separating them in a way that's a little bit different than what it is right now.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Julia.
I'm sorry, I'm probably overly confusing myself, but when you look at it now and like those last 2 photos, there is a wall almost on all of Scottwood. You know, you can see the clear cut. So, but then John said 69 linear feet or something. You're taking it down and rebuilding it the same? I'm a little confused.
So, John, perhaps if you could go to that second sheet that shows where it's coming down and going back up. And so not that one, the next one. And then if you can zoom in a little bit to that right-hand side of the sheet, whoop, not that one. If you can just zoom in a little bit and make that bigger, because it's a little far away. I think it's a little tough to see right now.
I'm not
There
sure
you
how to.
go. That's getting better. Okay, so there's a curb cut on the left that is essentially staying the same. So right there, and then if you go down below, it's lined up. And John, if you just gonna go straight down, and that's staying the same, okay? And then if you go down, there's a little section of existing wall right there. We're gonna take that down temporarily, essentially, to be able to let construction equipment in and out of there. Then we're going to be also demoing a small section where the new driveway entrance is going to be. John, if you move your cursor to the right a little bit, exactly. It's going to be going in through there. So we're also going to be demolishing a section in through there. So we're taking out 2 sections of that, and then we're rebuilding in between them. So there's a section that we could have left kind of an existing section in the middle, but it had a bunch of kind of tall piers coming out of it too, in places that didn't make sense to have the piers anymore. We were kind of worried about partially disassembling part of that wall and rebuilding, and it felt easier and cleaner and easier, more able for construction equipment to get in and out, to just completely rebuild that center section. So we have to demo for the one on the right to be able to get in and out of there, and then we're also taking out that small section to be able to allow construction equipment, and then we're rebuilding that entire section and having the piers on either side of the entries. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, it's gonna have the same basic kind of look as it does now.
Exactly. That's right. That's right.
Okay.
And in fact, it's going to have, right now, there's a big gap, kind of, John, where your cursor is. If you go up and to the right there, that's a really big wide gap. We have 2 kind of smaller gaps that are going to be there. So, because that's essentially a 2-car garage entryway as it existed before. And now we have kind of single car entryways that are going in and out. So yes, there's going to be kind of a long continuous wall with gaps for each driveway in and out.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for the petitioner? All right, seeing none, if there is anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this petition, please call in now and raise your hand. Once you've raised your hand, staff will call on you and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
All right, there are a few callers. Caller ending in 738, you have 3 minutes to speak. And you can press *6 to unmute your phone.
You said they need to press what, *6, right, Kristen, to unmute?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe we go to the next caller.
Yes. All right, we will go back to 738. Caller ending in 447, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. I had a question based on the previous conversation about curb cuts and the good point that Julia brought up about adding additional curb cuts, because there's a new curb cut in this development or in this plan, the new one on Fair Oaks Parkway, where there currently is no driveway, and they're planning to demolish part of the wall in order to add a new driveway to that section. And I wondered if that needed to be a part of this conversation or part of this variance, or if that's not at issue here. I wasn't clear about that.
I can answer that question. It will not be part of this variance. They have enough linear frontage along both sides of the property that meets the requirements of the requested curb cuts.
Okay, so they just already have the right to make a new driveway in that road.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, caller ending in 738. You have 3 minutes to speak. You press *6.
I will note while we are waiting for this caller 738 to be unmuted, that we did receive some communication, some written communication regarding this request. Quite a few actually. So we have a letter of opposition from the last name Herstein. We have a letter of opposition, I believe, from Johnson, a letter of support from Johnson, a letter of support from Brennan, support from Martin, support from Arbor, support from Malcoon, opposition from Cohn, letter of opposition from Simon, letter of support from John N. and Julie S., a letter of support from Taba, support from Hamp, support from Katz, support from Ludi, support from Hausen, support from Anus Vigian, support from Godwin, support from Farjo, support from Wasserman, support from Sexton, support from Herstein, support from O'Neill, and opposition from Hurley. I believe that is all of the communication, but if I miss one, please let me know.
We do have 2 more callers.
Yes, Dave, go ahead.
You want to say the Herstein, there was a support from Herstein, which came after the opposition, and when they found out more about it, they changed from opposing it to supporting it.
That's
Yes.
correct.
Yes,
So
sorry. Thanks for that clarification, Dave. Yes.
So, in fact, I was a little late to the signing into the meeting because I was reading all of those. There's a number of them.
Yes, there were quite a few.
All right, caller ending in 597. You'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. So we have some questions. We have a stone fence, and we live on the Fair Oaks side for Don. We front for Don, but our backyard is Fair Oaks. And we're not clear exactly what's going to be demolished and then how it's going to be. I'm very interested in what the look is going to be like on Fair Oaks. Hello?
Hello, yes. Was that your only question or your only comment?
Did you have anything else? Okay. Yeah, it's essentially a question. What's going to be demolished and what's it going to look like? after it's demolished on the Fair Oak side.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Caller ending in 598. You'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Can I please hear this answer first of the current question online?
Oh, yes, was that your only? Yes, if you want to mute yourself, we can have the applicant, I guess, answer quickly about the previous question.
Thank you.
There will be another curb cut on the north side of Fair Oaks to be able to allow the driveway in, where there will be similar piers. So same idea. Basically, it's just going to be demolishing to be able to get the driveway in and then having piers on either side. It's not part of this variance, so we didn't have much information on that other than showing the site plan, because we can be 100% opaque at the back of the property. It's just at the front of the property that we have the opacity, the 100%, that it has to be 50% opacity.
Thank you. So now caller 598, if you had a question or a comment, you can begin now. Sorry, you'll probably have to hit *6 to unmute yourself again. Did you have a question or a comment?
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Hi. It's not, we're in a decent property. We were never asked for a support or denial letter. Basically, our living room looks on the whole Fair Oaks stone wall, and we are really interested in what part of Fair Oaks stone wall is coming down.
Okay, well, I can tell you, I can't speak, I guess, directly to the design since I'm not on the design team, but the portion of the wall that's under consideration by the ZBA this evening is not the portion that's on Fair Oaks. We're only...
So the Fair Oaks portion is not going to be taken down to get the stone to put up the new section?
I can't speak to that with certainty, but the only portion of the wall that's under review tonight by the ZBA is the portion on the front side of the property.
So, great. So, you know, if they are not tearing down the Fair Oak stone wall, we really don't have a problem with it on that side of the property, because that's on the other side from us. If they're taking down the Fair Oaks wall, then that directly affects us, and we would have issues with the whole thing, because that's where they're getting their materials. And they haven't been clear where they're getting their materials from, other than mentioning Fair Oaks, but not really showing on the map what portion of the wall was going to be torn down.
I believe the portion that we are considering is where the new driveways are being constructed, in my
right. You're looking at where they're going to put it up. Yeah, that
is where they're taking stone from that area and essentially moving it around.
They're just moving it around. They're not, because they mentioned Fair Oaks and taking stone from Fair Oaks early, but didn't really point out on the map where on Fair Oaks they were taking the stone from. But that was mentioned earlier in the presentation. They mentioned we're going to get stone from Fair Oaks, which is in the back side of the property.
Yeah, I can. The applicant, I think, can probably speak to that a little more clearly.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to. And John, could you bring up that slide that you had just brought up? So if it's possible for you to see your screen, there is a new curb cut up in the north portion that John is circling right now. So there will be a small section taken down for the penetration to that wall for that driveway. We also are taking down wall in the area that we're reviewing tonight, and we'll be able to have material from that as well. So there will be a small section coming down along Fair Oaks, and there are some sections coming down along Scottwood, all of which will be material for the new wall. I would also just like to say that if there's ever any issue with the amount of material that we need, there's plenty of glaciated cobble in this area. The supply should not be an issue because it's something that is dug up on many construction sites and is readily available. So I don't think we're super concerned about having enough material to be able to build it if for some reason, you know, there's difficulty with the salvage material that's there, though we're starting with that as our first
So
plot.
it's way on the northwest corner of the property, if I'm still unmuted. The northwest corner of the property, just about how many feet down the northwest corner?
I'd have to, John, I'm sorry, you'd have to bring up your plan again for me to estimate
Just
that.
wide enough for a one-car driveway.
Yeah, so.
Just
but
wide
it has
enough
to-
for one car drive. Okay, so you're gonna cut a wide enough hole for one car drive. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other callers this evening?
No other callers are indicating.
All right, thank you, Kristen. We are in discussion. Todd.
Three things. Number one, Ives is one of my favorite Ann Arbor neighborhoods. It's a wonderful place, and it's nice to see somebody trying to keep the character of the neighborhood. It really is a wonderful place to bicycle in the summer, and I particularly like the dirt road there. That has nothing to do with what we have to decide today. I just thought I'd say that. I'm probably not alone in this. Number two, a strict application of our 5 criteria would have to turn this down because the property can be used without this additional stretch of stone wall. But I think applying that strict letter here is nonsensical because they're trying to put as much stone wall as possible back and to make the new house match as much as possible the rest of the neighborhood. So that's sort of my second comment. And on that basis, I'm in favor of this. Number 3, John, and maybe this is a comment to you. You mentioned there's not a stone wall ordinance, there's only a fence ordinance. And perhaps you've talked with the city attorney. I would just point out that 4 years ago, I took a township north of Midland to circuit court where the zoning board of appeals couldn't read their ordinance and distinguish between a deck and a porch and got it completely reversed. In my opinion, there's no way that a stone wall is the same as a fence. I'm not even sure we have the authority to address this. So if that's going to be a problem in the future and there are other stone walls, then maybe the people who draft the ordinance should look at this. I don't think it'll be a problem if it's approved, but I'm really not sure that we have the authority to even address this. Because again, repeating, in my opinion, a stone wall is not a fence. That said, I'm going to be voting for it, so hopefully this will just go away. But if they were shot down tonight, unless you have backing from the city attorney, if they wanted to be difficult, I don't think it's my off-hip quick opinion is that it's not, the city's not in a particularly good position. So those are my 3 comments.
Thank you, Todd. Dave, go ahead.
I'm with Todd on this and largely. In terms of the 5 criteria, generally, I don't see the letter of those criteria as applying when we consider the fence ordinances or the ordinances related to the fence. Because they're really talking about setbacks on structures and a lot of other aspects. This is my neighborhood. I walk down Verdun, and there's actually another stone wall on the other side of Verdun that I walk by all the time, and I really enjoy walking by that. And I think it's actually a little bit taller than this one on Fair Oaks, another street that I walk down all the time. I think the design team should be commended for their attention to maintaining detail that's in keeping with the historic nature of this property and this the stone wall, not just on this property, but other properties in the area. I agree with Todd on a stone wall and a fence are two different things. And I think this really adds value, adds design value and artistic value or landscape value to the appearance of the neighborhood. This is an easy one for me to support, so I will be voting for it. And I want to commend the design team for maintaining the historic integrity of the existing stone wall.
Thank you, Dave. Any other comments or discussion? Elizabeth, yeah.
I appreciate Dave and Todd's perspective, and I usually find myself agreeing with them pretty easily. But this one I'm struggling with just because some of the reasoning around this was about the house facing the street and being more incorporated, like in a friendly way to the street. And this looks to me almost fortress-like. I mean, the reason that we're approving this extra bit of stone wall is essentially privacy, it seems to me. If you really want a circle driveway, and then they're realizing, well, if we do the circle driveway, then it's going to be completely exposed. We need to put this stone in between. I guess I understand the concept of patterning, that it makes it more seamless and continuous throughout the neighborhood. But ultimately, the purpose of this strikes me more as like a screening and a privacy, and almost, well, I'm hopeful that other commissioners will have comments to share, because I'm struggling with that element of it.
Chris, yes, go ahead.
If you look, going back to, oh golly, sheet L2, and you look at the site plan that they have drawn up, it clearly says that the proposed stone wall is 3 foot 5 inches. And I've spent my life doing snow removal down there and doing landscape contracting down there. And a 3.5 foot wall is certainly not a privacy wall. Considering the cost and the effort to put this back up, and it's been brought up that, you know, this is something to be preserved. I really want to commend that, and I don't find this to be something that is, you know, sure, it's a wall, but at 3 foot 5 inches, it comes up to your hip, and I don't consider that a privacy issue. I think that it looks to me like there's going to be less opening, because while there was it looks on there like there were 2, and they're narrower than the 2 before. So I don't, this doesn't present problems for me. I'm way more interested that, you know, they're bothering to put the thing back up, because it's been there for like 100 years. So I find that has a lot more weight than the notion of a privacy wall that's 3.5 foot tall, which I wouldn't consider a privacy wall. I'm going to vote for it.
I'll just say briefly, I understand some of the concerns that have been expressed, and I've struggled a little bit with some of those myself. The way that we apply the fence ordinance to the stone wall and the function of the wall. I know, looking at the fence ordinance, it's designed to, I guess, allow more visibility for people pulling in and out of their driveway to see cars, to see bikes, to see pedestrians. And that is a little bit of a concern for me when you're building a stone wall right up next to the driveway. But in this case, I think the uniqueness of the wall, its historic character, what it's contributing to the architectural landscape of both the property itself and the overall neighborhood, for me, trumps some of those other concerns in this specific scenario. So I don't know that I would vote this way in every request that was like this, but I think this one is unique enough that it gets my support. So those are my 2 cents. If anyone else has comments, I'm happy to hear those. Mike?
Points, Candace, and really everyone who's made their points. I see both sides of this, but for me, I'm with Chris. The height being so short puts me over the top to vote for this.
Julia?
Yeah, I just want to agree with Chris. Like when I first read it, I was kind of like, oh, privacy wall, this is going to be horrible in this neighborhood. But then when I went and looked at it, I'm like, oh no, if they're maintaining this wall, this will be fantastic. So I think it'll be great that it's going to look similar to the way it is now. It is special.
Yeah, John.
If I could say something, we all know that hindsight is 20/20, and now I didn't foresee this issue coming up, but I wish I would have put the definition of offense in the staff report. And if I may, I'll just read it real quick. And that's why the stone wall, in my opinion, it falls under the definition of offense, and that's why it's being regulated as such. And this ordinance states, a fence is any artificial permanent fence, partition, structure, or gate erected as a dividing marker, a barrier, or an enclosure. And so the stone wall serves the same function as a fence. I'm not going to argue that a stone wall is a fence. I know it's not, but it serves as the same function. Therefore, we do the best we can, and we had to interpret a stone wall as a fence under section 5.26.
Thank you, John.
I'm prepared to make a motion if you would like one.
That sounds great. Thank you, Dave.
ZBA 21-003, 1908 Scottwood Avenue, variance. In accordance with the established standards for approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants the following variance from Chapter 55, Unified Development Code, Section 526, fences. A variance to allow pillars of a stone wall to be 5 feet 8 inches in height and the wall itself to be at 100% opacity in the front yard. The stone wall will match the existing stone wall on the subject property and the surrounding neighborhood.
Thank you, Dave. We have a motion. Do we have support? Support from Chris. Thank you. Chris?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Julia?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Elizabeth?
Yes.
Dave?
DeVarty, yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Charlotte?
Yes.
We have support for approval. The request is granted.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too. Moving on to petition ZBA 21-004-1104 South Forest Avenue. John?
Scott Clausen, representing the property owners, is requesting relief from section 5.32.2, alteration to a non-conforming structure, in order to modify a 3-unit 8-occupancy rental and convert the structure to a 2-unit 12-occupancy residence. The proposed changes include 2 additions to the rear elevation in order to square off the footprint of the home. The applicant is proposing to add 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms to both the attic and the basement. The property is zoned R4C multiple family district. The residence was built in 1915 and is approximately 1,441 square feet in size. The property is located on the west side of South Forest Avenue in the North Burns Park neighborhood. The property is non-conforming as it does not meet the minimum lot area and lot width requirements for the R4C zoning district. The two new additions at the rear of the residence are approximately 42 and 70 square feet respectively. Neither of the additions will encroach further into the side yard setbacks. The property currently holds a certificate of rental registration that expires on March 27, 2021. The first slide is the location of the zoning map. You see the highlighted parcel in the center of your screen. The next slide is the location map showing existing conditions in the surrounding area and neighborhoods. The next slide is the zoomed in aerial photo of the property. The next slide is the survey that was submitted with the application. And these are the two areas, and I'll show later on that where it's going to propose to be squared off. The next slide is the site plan, and you see the proposed two additions, the 42 square foot addition and the 70 square foot to square off the building. And you see the parking, and these are the existing conditions on the right and the proposed conditions on the left. The next slide are the floor plans. You see the upper level plan and the main level plan and the basement plan. One second. The next slide is the main level plan and the basement plan. The main level plan consists of 4 bedrooms on the main level and 2 bedrooms in the basement. That will be 1 unit. And the next slide shows the attic level plan and the upper level plan. Attic getting 2 bedrooms and the upper level plan getting 4 bedrooms. So you have 2 6-bedroom units. The next slide shows the elevations being proposed. You have the south elevation, which is a side elevation, the west elevation, which is the rear elevation, showing the new fire escape system. The north elevation, you see the rear of the property here, and then the front, and then the new front elevation of the property. The applicant put this in the application. There was previously, there is some fire damage to the property, and that's in the attic, and that will be rectified and corrected, that existing fire damage in the attic where the new proposed bedrooms are going to be. The next slides are the photos of my inspection. You see the existing structure, the front elevation. This is the rear elevation. This is where the 42 square foot addition is being proposed. And then you have the other side, the 70 square foot addition being proposed. The rear elevation as it exists today. The driveway and showing a portion of the rear and its relationship to the next adjacent property. The back parking lot, and a conceptual design rendering of what the proposed finished project will look like. So overall, it's an alteration to a non-conforming structure with the 2 additions in the back, neither one encroaching into the setbacks any further than the existing home, and then the alteration to allow new bedrooms in the attic, 2 new bedrooms in the attic, and 2 new bedrooms in the basement. That's the end of my presentation, and I'll take any questions at this time.
Thank you, John. Any questions? Chris?
So I see what amounts to like maybe a 10 by 10 bump next to the stairway coming down at the rear. Is anything being demolished there, or is this all just going to get added on so that the new rear dimension will be the existing 10-foot, 12-foot wide space? Is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah, you're talking about this existing bump out?
Yes.
Yep, the two new additions are going to be flush with that, and that's just going to be, yep, and it's just going to be rehabbed. They're not going to, the footprint's not going to increase. It's just going to, be squared off, and these two additions don't encroach into either side setback. But since it's a non-conforming structure and it's multifamily, that requires an alteration approval, and then the two bedrooms in the basement and the two bedrooms in the attic, additional rooms require the alteration. So it's kind of like a bundled package.
I see.
Basically three alterations in one.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for John? All right, if the petitioner is ready, you may begin your presentation. You will have 5 minutes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Scott Clausen with for 1104 South Forest. I think John presented the scope of the project pretty well. If you could tell from the pictures that the house has been added on to and it's pretty chopped up. So from the front, it looks pretty nice. I mean, it looks like a normal house. And then as you go to the side or the back, you can see the additions and basically just kind of how it's put together with not really any kind of flow to it or really any consideration for design. The attic you saw had a fire in it, and they did repair it, but they only repaired it by, looks like, resheeting and shingling it. So we do need to do repairs up there. That rear addition that you're looking at right now is actually kind of pulling away from the house and is in need of substantial repair. The house is in generally kind of poor shape, I would say. So by getting this approval for the alteration, we can add on to the back of this, basically be rebuilding this, well, adding on, squaring up the house so that visually it's going to look good. Structurally, it's going to be put together and be sound. It's going to be a lot safer than it is right now. We're going to reduce, it's currently a 3-unit. We are proposing to reduce it down to a 2-unit, which is going to bring it more in compliance with the zoning. Let's see. So let's see what else. I guess in short, we're looking to improve the property. We're going to be investing a lot of time and money and resources into the improvement. We're not going to be increasing the nonconformity. We're not going to be increasing any of the encroachments into the rear or the side setbacks. And it's going to be more of an asset to the community. It's going to be a much safer, much sounder project. It's going to be all new plumbing, all new electrical, all new mechanical systems. It's going to be a much better house when we're done with it.
All right, thank you. Questions for the petitioner? Dave?
So if we could go back to that photo of the rear again, John. So I'm guessing the addition on the back, you said it's pulling away from the house. I'm guessing it probably doesn't have a proper foundation. So I'm guessing, and maybe you could tell me, as you're will that be torn down and then rebuild from scratch with the proper foundation?
Well, we're definitely going to have to tear the top part of it off. We try to save as much as the framing as we can. But that foundation is going to have to be repaired, whether it's by underpinning or whether it ends up, once we get into it, having to remove it and just re-pour that wall.
That's my guess. I'm also guessing this is going to be pretty much a full gut and rehab with all new wiring and everything. on the
Yes.
interior,
Yeah.
with reconfiguring the entire interior.
Yeah, there's new, if you look at the elevations, there's new siding, new windows, all new plumbing, all new electrical, fire safety, smoke detectors throughout, interconnected. It's just the house, it's gonna look more like one unit that was built at the same time, like a house should look.
And then the entrances to the two units, one entrance will be primary entrance in the front, and one, you need the two egresses from each unit, right? For fire code?
No, you only need, this is residential, two-family, you only need one. You have egress windows from each bedroom,
Okay.
but the primary for the first floor and basement is in that front door, and then the back door will do the second unit, which is the second floor in the attic.
Gotcha. And then I was looking at the layout. It looked like 5 parking spaces. Is that accurate, that you're going to have space for?
Yes.
Okay. In this neighborhood, which again is my neighborhood, and just as the last one, I walk down Fair Oaks and Verdun all the time, I also walk down Forest all the time. Parking is a real challenge in the neighborhood, although when the university is on break, it becomes more available on-street parking.
Yeah, this has a pretty good, it already has, we don't have to really do anything to the parking. It's already substantial spots back there.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner? All right, if there is anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this petition, please call in now and raise your hand. Once, if you've already called in, please raise your hand and staff will call on you to speak.
No callers.
Thank you, Kristen. I will note that we did receive a letter of concern and opposition from Morton and Raya Brown at 1023 South Forest Avenue. And with that, we are in discussion. Dave, go ahead.
I did read the letter with the concerns about the transitional nature of this neighborhood and the changing from single family occupancy to rental, multi-unit rentals. I grew up on Dewey Street on the other side of Packard, and I lived this transition in that neighborhood. It's tough as these neighborhoods change on residents who have been there, and in my case, having grown up there. And I've seen this happening on Forest for the last several decades. I understand those concerns, but the nature of the neighborhood is such that it's close to campus, and that is a pressure that's going to continue to happen here. What I have seen in some of these neighborhoods that are closer to Burns Park, as Forest is, than Dewey, Sylvan, Brookwood, and those on the other side of Packard, is that as this housing prices in the Burns Park neighborhood increase, and I've seen actually rental properties that are 2 units or 1 or 2 units being purchased by a single family purchaser who reconfigures it back into a single family household. So I do see competing economic pressures on this side of Packard as you get closer to the actual school property, that it's like the ebbing and flowing of tides. depending on the economy and how many students the university admits, that's going to continue to function in this neighborhood. I want to speak to those residents in this neighborhood. I understand those concerns. In this case, it's an alteration to a non-conforming structure, which has much more lenient standards that it has to meet for us to get an approval vote. I will be voting for this. I think it does meet the lenient standards to grant an alteration, so I'll vote for it.
Thank you, Dave. Any other comments or discussion? Chris?
I'm with Dave on that, but I also think that what they're doing to the structure is extremely commendable. You know, this is in a space where it could get raised and something completely different get put in. I think you know, a rebuild of this nature helps to solidify the neighborhood. You are clearly investing in the neighborhood, and I have no problem giving a variance for someone who wants to do this kind of supportive work. So very good. I'll be supporting it.
Thank you, Chris. Charlotte?
I'm prepared to make a motion, unless, sorry, anyone else wants to speak.
No, I think we're ready. Go for it. Thank you.
ZBA 21004, 1104 South Forest Avenue, alteration to a non-conforming structure. The Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants a relief from section 5.32.2, alteration to a non-conforming structure, to allow the conversion of a 3-unit, 8-occupancy rental and modify the structure to a 2-unit, 12-occupancy residence. The proposed changes include 2 additions to the rear elevation in order to square off the footprint of the home. The applicant is proposing to add 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms to both the attic and the basement. The alterations will not encroach further into the existing setbacks.
Thank you, Charlotte. We have a motion. Do we have support? Support from Chris. Thank you. Julia?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Charlotte?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Todd?
Yes.
Elizabeth?
Yes.
Dave?
DeVarty, yes.
Chris?
Yes.
The request is granted.
Great. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too. Moving on to petition ZBA 21-005 201 South First Avenue. John?
Amanda Caldwell of Ideal Due Diligence, representing the property owners, is seeking a variance from section 5.24.5, subsection B, other mixed use and non-residential and special purpose districts area permanent signs, in order to install a 636 square foot wall sign on the east facade of the building. The maximum sign area allowed for this property is 200 square feet. The property is zoned PUD, Planned Unit Development District. The subject property is located on the southeast corner of West Washington Street and South First Avenue in the downtown area of the city. The development was approved by City Council on December 1st, 2008, and the first units were occupied in December of 2013. The property contains 155 dwelling units, with the city owning the 240 space parking deck. The petitioners are proposing to install a framed historical photo on stretched vinyl canvas to the east facing building facade. The building consists of metal panels, and the vinyl canvas is the only viable method of installation. If the photo was painted to the building, the proposal would be classified as art and a variance would not be required. Based on the definition of a sign in the Unified Development Code below, the framed vinyl banner meets the definition of sign and therefore requires ZBA approval. The first slide is the location or the zoning map. You see the highlighted parcel. As I said, it's at the corner of Washington Street and South First. The next map is the location map showing existing conditions in the surrounding area. The next slide is the zoomed in photo of the property, and the proposed wall sign is on this side of the building right here, facing the old Mark's Carts, if anyone's familiar with that. This is the survey that was submitted with the application. This is a side profile, basically a construction type photo that was submitted with the application and showing kind of the rendering applied to the side of the building. These are photos that were submitted with the application showing the profile of the sign and how it looks and the rendering of it, and it's covering up some vents and some mechanical equipment. And that's the photo of the proposed wall sign showing a historical photo of downtown Ann Arbor. Next slides are my photos I took on my inspection. You see the subject property and the entrance to the property, the parking deck and the northeast corner of the building. And this is the existing facade as it currently is situated. And just a more close photo of the building materials and the location of the proposed wall sign. If anyone has any questions, I will take them at this time.
Thank you, John. So I guess just to clarify, from my understanding, the reason this is being considered a sign has to do entirely with how it's being attached to the building. If it was attached in a different way, it would be considered art and wouldn't, like they could just put it up.
Correct. Paintings, according to the code, don't meet the definition of a sign. But once it's on a banner material, vinyl, stretched vinyl, and it's framed in, it's going to have a frame around it, it becomes a sign.
Okay. Thank you. Dave, go ahead.
So John, if we grant this variance, I actually like this historic photo as opposed to that blank wall that's there now. But if we grant the variance, does that mean they could put advertising units for sale or for rent as a sign on there? I mean, once we grant the variance, can't they put any sign they want up there?
That's not the intention of the applicant or the property owners, is what I've been told, and it's going to be for historical photos only. I think the intent of it is to not only to beautify that blank facade, but also to kind of cover up some of this mechanical equipment.
Well, I'm for that, but I'm concerned about putting advertising up there.
That's a valid point.
Can we condition the variance that it not be used for advertising purposes? Is that within our purview, or is that not an option?
Hard to define advertising, right? Like,
well, right.
It's a picture of Ann Arbor. You're advertising the city, aren't you?
Yeah, old cars.
You can tailor the variance to that. You could say that there's not to be used for advertising purposes, for sale or for lease of units. It can only be of graphic design only and historical photos.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, Elizabeth.
How long has that side of the building just been up, looking the way it looks right now?
The building was completed around 2012, 2013, so nearly a decade.
Okay, I guess I'm just confused as to why after 10 years of looking at it like that, all of a sudden it feels like we need to put something on top of it.
Is that our purview to ask that question?
No. It's just it's an area of concern that board member Nelson has. So I think the applicant might want to speak to that as well. I think that's a valid concern.
I mean, I'm curious about it sort of piggybacking
this
off
come
of
up?
Dave's point.
Why did
Yeah,
this come up now?
Yeah, I mean, like piggybacking off of Dave's point, it's as a beautification feature, it may seem nice, but if the permission that we're granting actually gives more flexibility for it to be something else in the future that might be of more commercial value, I guess that's, well, anyway.
Any other questions for John? All right, if the petitioner is ready, you may begin your presentation. You have 5 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Oh, great. Yes, I understand everybody's concern regarding the advertising. That's not the intent that the City Club team had indicated when they reached out to us. Initially, it was a request to see what options they had to beautify that side of the building. And then, of course, quickly realizing that the facade was not going to allow them to paint anything. It would have looked worse, probably trying to paint it, would have gotten into disrepair quickly. We did reach out to signage vendors to have them evaluate if it could be a vinyl graphic applied directly to the facade. That was also not feasible. And City Club's intent was for a mural or historical photos, essentially, and then to try to beautify that facade. And unfortunately, the only method of installing that came about that was feasible was the vinyl banner graphic that, being in the frame, does toss them into the signage category, unfortunately. They have never indicated that it was going to be for advertisement or anything down the road. Me being nosy and logical, I did ask them from a design perspective, with weather in Michigan, what their intent was going to be down the road, 3-5 years, if that graphic started to come into disrepair or look worse for wear. And their intent would be to keep the frame and put in another historical photo of Ann Arbor. I was gonna say, I think, this one's kind of, and, I don't really know what else detail I can provide at the time, but if there are any questions, oh, yes.
All right, thank you very much. Dave, go ahead.
I have a question of the petitioner. I have some prepared texts that were given to help us with preparing resolutions, and I'll make a resolution, but I'd like to add to what's been prepared here, and I want to ask the petitioner if there would be any trouble with this language that I want to add to my variance resolution. The sign is intended to be for artistic or historic representation of Ann Arbor. The sign cannot be used to advertise units for sale or lease. So if I added that in the language for the variance, would that meet your needs? If I could add that, it would secure my vote.
Yes, and that's the intent City Club has always had in the beginning. They always intended it to be artwork. We were just having to work around existing conditions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner?
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Oh, hold on. We're not ready for a motion yet, Dave. Don't
Oh.
get crazy.
Oh, we have.
Chris, go ahead.
My thoughts are that if that's the case, then there probably shouldn't be any reticence about making a complete advertising ban. Thoughts?
Sure.
Nobody else has advertising.
What are we defining as advertising? Like, this is tricky.
What are we defining as art?
Well, right. We can't. I don't think we should try to define either thing.
I will fall back onto the definition of pornography. I know it when I see it. Art is art. Advertising is advertising. I have a sneaking suspicion that Joe Guy on the street will know the difference. So would anybody sitting at this commission. That an advertisement is a pitch for something. What I saw on that wall was not a pitch for anything. And maybe Todd, you'd like to weigh in on this.
Todd, did you have a question for the petitioner?
Or maybe not.
Well, I have some comments, but I want to make sure that Chris Fraley is done. Are you done?
I have to find myself. It keeps moving around. Yes, I'm muted.
Okay, all right. So this is an easy one for me. I think this application fails to meet each and every one of the 5 criteria that we have to weigh. The distinction isn't between art and sign, but whether it meets the 5 criteria. Let's look at each one. Are there
Hold on. Sorry, Todd, 1 second, not to interrupt you. Were there any other questions for the petitioner? I think we've gotten a little bit ahead of ourselves.
Okay, I'm getting it. I'm voting no on this thing. It stinks.
We'll come back to you, Todd. I'll give you a minute when we're in discussion. I just want to wrap up the petitioner questions and the public comment first. All right, so seeing no more questions for the petitioner, now if there is anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this petition, please call in and raise your hand. Once you've raised your hand, staff will call on you and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
No
I will
callers.
note, oh, sorry, what was that, Kristen?
No callers.
Thank you. I will note that I did not see any letters of support or objection regarding this petition from anyone in the public. So now with that said, we are in discussion and Todd, take it away.
Okay, so the first criteria, there are plenty of buildings that have a large flat side to them. So this property isn't unique about that. Second, if they want a sign, they can put a 200 square foot sign. And it's easy to find the building. This isn't going to add anything that a 200 square foot sign wouldn't add. 3, art, everybody has individual tastes. It's not a question of whether it's art or not, but are there public benefits? No, it's perhaps a private benefit. And I would say if we really want to have a cute historical photo, the way the city has done it throughout the city is to have an antique photo and a plaque at curb level, just for example, of the kind that's outside the courthouse, not a large piece of canvas on the side of the building. And in terms of a reasonable use of the land, this building has been open and occupied for most of a decade. They don't need this piece of art or a sign or whatever it is. So it fails that criteria as well. And the last one is clearly self-imposed because people have been living in the structure for years and they didn't need this. So from my point of view, this is a perfect application. It fails each and every one of the 5 criteria we're supposed to look at. It's not even close. I'm definitely voting no on this.
One caller did call in and raise their hand just after public hearing was closed.
Okay, no, that's great. I know there is a bit of a delay with the broadcast, so yes, they can both hear them now.
Okay. Caller ending in 534, you will have 3 minutes to speak. You can unmute yourself by pressing *6.
Good evening. My name is Tom Stahlberg, and I live at 1202 Traver Street. I want to give some perspective. I was on the Historic District Commission for 6 years, and I'm currently on the board of the Ann Arbor Historical Foundation, which is has a lot to do with those historic plaques. I happen to have worked on the plaques that are on the parking structure in the Lower Town area. So, I have a lot of familiarity with that. I love history. I love historic signs and art. But let me tell you what we learned when we were on the Historic District Commission, and we were first examining revisions to the sign ordinance, which has recently been updated. one of the things that we learned at the time in studying that is you can't regulate the content. You get into First Amendment type of issues there. So what you can regulate is size and some other things. The sign ordinance has recently been revised, and it's pretty thorough. So as much as we might like a certain content, we can't regulate content. So I'm not sure if you're even allowed to have a resolution that you're voting on that asks the petitioner to limit that, because it may not meet the law. I'm not an expert on the law, just an amateur historian, so I don't want to tell you what to do in terms of that. Just raise it that it's a concern and that it's something that's been looked at for a number of years. And you may want to postpone this and consult the sign ordinance or your legal staff in terms of expertise on this matter. I leave the decision up to you. You're the experts in your area. I do want to throw out one more tidbit of history because I'm here. The house that was originally at this location is currently at 1416 Pontiac Trail. It was moved there when the city's first municipal garage was constructed on this site in the late 1940s, I believe, which was then later demolished for the structure that's there. So a little fun trivia along with some real head scratching for you on what do you do about this. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. All right, we are now back in discussion. Mike.
Yeah, so to me, the benefit is anyone who walks by this building. It's not to the people who live in the building. And I lived in this building for 2 years, and the big green wall is, to me, this would be an improvement. My issue with it is I don't think we should try to amend this to restrict it to a certain kind of content. I think that's a recipe for disaster. And I think, either you think you take the owners at their word that they're not going to slap up a bunch of 3-for-1 signs selling Pepsi, or they're going to keep the historical photos up. And do you trust them or not? So, I will not support anything that tries to regulate the content of the sign to amend the request.
Thank you, Mike. Julia, go ahead.
See, I kind of feel a little bit the same about this as the curb cut. Like, that couple had a clear intention, which was logical and made sense, but they might sell the building next year, you never know. So even if I did trust the city club never to use this to sell Pepsi, as an odd example, they might sell it next year. I mean, they might have no intention today, but tomorrow it might go into sales. You just never know. And we're doing something for the life of the property, not for the owner. So I'm aiming towards no again. Even though I think it would be beautiful to have a mural up there.
Thank you, Julia. Charlotte, go ahead.
I just want to echo the thoughts about regulating content. I'm pretty sure there's some case law there. Sorry, John, do you want to?
Go ahead.
I'm also with Todd on this. I'm going to be voting no. I don't see any way to, it's going to be a sign. They could put up advertising, I believe, even if we tried to regulate it, but I don't think that we should get into that territory.
Thank you, Charlotte. John, did you have a comment?
Yeah, so I just talked to the planning manager, and he said that since this issue has come up, that we can consult with the attorney's office in the next month, and we can table this tonight to see whether restricting the signage to only historical photos, whether that would be lawful or not. So he's actually suggesting that we table it and get more direction from the city attorney's office and come bring it back next month.
Okay, I guess my concern or my question, I guess, for other people on the board, for some of us, I think it's not so much a question of content. It's a question of whether or not it meets the the criteria for granting a variance. And if that's the case, it doesn't matter what is inside the frame. If it still doesn't meet the criteria, it's still not going to get approval. So if it's
However
going to
you
get
guys want it.
denied either way, I guess I'd rather just save them their time and having to come back again in another month and just vote on it now. But if there are board members who would be swayed one way or the other, depending on the information that we get from the city attorney's office, then of course I'm agreeable to tabling it as well. I guess that's a discussion that we can have to see what the best way is to proceed with that. In the meantime, Dave, did you have another comment?
I wanted to let everybody know that I've been persuaded by all the discussion, Todd's point of view, the caller, Mr. Stolberg, and his discussion of sign ordinances. Yeah, Todd, I'm with you. I can't see how this meets our standards, and they can do something with the 200 square feet that does meet our standards. So yeah, I'm still happy to make a motion without the added language at any point after the discussion. Yeah, but I want people to know I indicated one position earlier in the discussion, and I've changed my mind based on the discussion here.
All right. Thank you, Dave. Chris, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to commend Todd. On numerous occasions over the last year and change, he has sort of hauled the reins and said, look, we have 5 criterion. And again, I am there. I have been pulled back from the brink of stupidity. I wasn't even paying attention that, yeah, that was a content issue. But again, it's the 5 things. And like you said, it's not there's no gray areas. Either it meets these or it doesn't. And so there we are. So Todd, thank you.
Well, I think we've all been saved because here I'm sitting here as an attorney and this content regulation went in one ear and right out the other. So I should have had a 2-minute break to refresh. We can't regulate the content.
Right.
I think it's pretty clear. But
Right,
thank
but
you.
you're-
I've been saved by you folks as well. Thank you.
Go team, go. All right, any other discussion? If not, I think we're ready for a motion, Dave.
Okay. ZBA 21-005, 201 South First Avenue, variance. Based on the following findings in accordance with the established standards for approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants the following variance from Chapter 55 Unified Development Code, Section 524(5)B, permanent signs, other mixed use and special purpose districts area. A variance to allow a 636 square foot wall sign on the east facade of the multifamily building. The sign is to be applied to a vinyl surface with a solid border frame.
Support.
Oops, sorry, I was muted. We have a motion from Dave, support from Charlotte. Thank you. Julia,
No.
Charlotte,
No.
Chris,
No.
Dave.
DeVarty, no.
I also vote no. Elizabeth,
No.
Mike,
No.
Nicole,
No.
Todd.
No.
The request is denied. Moving on to petition ZBA 21-006, 1135 Burke Avenue. John?
Jeff Willard, property owner, is requesting a variance of 27.5% from section 5.16.6 subsection A2D in order to construct a 917 square foot 2-story detached garage. The ordinance allows a maximum of 35% of the rear open space to be impervious. The owner is requesting to occupy 62.5% of the rear open space. The owner is requesting relief from section 5.32.2, alteration to a nonconforming structure, in order to construct a second story to the existing residence and to expand the existing front porch. The porch and second story will not encroach further into the required setbacks. The property is zoned R1D, single-family dwelling. The subject property is located on the northeast corner of Burke Avenue and Potter Avenue in the Almendinger Heights neighborhood. The home was built in 1939 and is approximately 768 square feet in size. The applicants are proposing to construct a 917 square foot, two-story detached garage that will replace the existing one-car garage. The main residence has plans to expand the first floor to accommodate an expanded dining room and office area. The first floor addition will extend to the east and will not encroach further into the front setback along Potter Avenue. The petition proposes a new second story that includes a master bedroom and walk-in closet, 2 additional bedrooms, and a bathroom. The second story will not encroach further into the front setbacks, but will be built directly above the first floor. The existing front porch will be expanded to the north side of the property, but will not extend closer to Burke Avenue. Saying my screen sharing is disabled. Kristen, can you give me screen sharing capabilities? There we go. Thank you. And the first slide is the zoning map. You see the subject property at the corner of Potter and Burke Avenue. The next slide is the location map showing surrounding properties and existing conditions. The next slide is the zoomed in aerial photo. And as you can see from the subject property, the position of it in relationship to the 2 properties of the north, it's much further in front. So therefore it doesn't meet the average front setback. The applicant is requesting to put the second story directly above the first. So no further encroachment into that front setback. And then as you'll see in the next couple slides, the existing front porch doesn't meet either. It's just heading straight north towards the adjacent property owner over here. The next slide is the survey that was submitted with the application. And this next slide is the site plan showing the second story that's going to come along the existing plane, cut back here, and just in this exact footprint, and this footprint of the house. You see the existing front porch. The applicant's proposing to extend it and to square it up along the front of the house. And then you see the garage proposed in the back that does not meet the rear open space requirements. This is the roof plan and basement plan that was submitted, floor plans with the application. This is the new proposed first floor with the expanded dining room and the new office. And then on the second floor, you see the 2 bedrooms, the master suite, closets, and a bathroom. These are the elevations that were submitted with the application. You see the south elevation, you see the front porch, and the west elevation showing the front elevation of the new facade. East elevation and north elevation. And this is the floor plans of the proposed detached garage in the rear. And elevations of the proposed garage the new garage as it faces Potter. These are the photos that I took when I was at the site. As you can see, it's got a bump out on this first floor, and that establishes that front setback. And the proposed building plane of the first floor extension is going to continue along that same plane right there. And that's just a close-up photo of the existing condition on that south wall and where the line is established. This is the rear yard, and you see the existing one-car detached garage. This is the back of the house, and you see the property to the north. More of the rear yard and the existing detached garage. Another photo of the existing detached garage that's to be demolished. This is looking at the front of the house and the relationship to the two properties to the north, and you can see how it sits much further in front of the other homes. And this is looking between the two adjacent properties, subject property on your right. You see the garage, and this is where the new porch will be, and then the second story going straight up. I can take any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you, John. Any questions for staff? Todd, go ahead.
Yes, John, could you help me out a little bit on the, what's the term? The amount of the rear yard that has to be open to drainage and rain as opposed to being concreted or asphalted over. What, have we had other similar issues like this? I don't remember one. And what is the thinking? I can think of some reasons, but is there some thinking on the part of the city in drafting this? We want to make sure that X amount of a rear yard is open for not to be concrete and asphalt, because I'm just trying to think how important that this criterion should be in my thinking.
It has to do with impervious coverage and stormwater issues and building massing to adjacent properties. The closer you get to the rear of a property or the side of someone's property, it has to do with the relationship and sizes of structures as they relate to the rear yard and adjacent or abutting properties.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Julia, go ahead.
And can we split this so that we could take up that issue of the garage and the impervious surface separate from the addition to the house?
Yeah, when you read the motion, they can be read in two separate motions. I believe there's already two separate motions. So yeah, you read the motion for an alteration, you read the motion for a variance, and you can vote on them separately. Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Dave, go ahead.
I have a question. For John, I see the two motions presented that we could make separating out those two issues. When they apply for the variance, are they submitting two separate application fees, or is it one application fee that staff has split out into two separate issues?
Just one application fee.
Okay, just curious about that.
Any other questions for John? All right, if the petitioner is ready, you may begin your presentation. You will have 5 minutes.
We're having an issue with Zoom, I think, with the petitioner. Candace, I just set you up as a co-host. Can you see the participant count?
Yes, it looks.
Does it show 5 attendees and then list 4?
Yes.
Okay, so the petitioner I've been emailing with, I think that they are there, but I'm not. I think there is an issue with Zoom where I'm not able to bring them into the meeting. John, are you able to see?
I see 5 attendees, but I only see 4 listed. I see, yeah.
Okay, so I'm not sure what the issue is. I give them the phone number to call in.
Okay, yeah, that was going to be my question, if they could just call in.
Yeah, so I think we should give some time for them to do that, because I just sent that email. See if they can call in.
Okay.
John, do we have their phone number? We could call them as well.
Yes, I have his phone number. Would you like me to call him as well?
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna mute myself.
All right. Caller ending in 324. Are you the applicant?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, great. So yeah, I'm Todd because I'm logged on and I have the phone on, so I'm not sure what the technical difficulty here is. I don't have a lot more to add because some questions were coming up regarding the non-conformance request versus the garage variance request. The non-conformance is pretty cut and dry, looking to extend back the house and add a second story and follow those continuing planes that already exist with the garage. I've lived here for 8 to 9 years and I've sort of went back and forth on what I'd want to do with this. You know, one easy option would be to push that garage all the way up to the house and attach it to the house itself. But in my view, that would create like a Bigfoot type structure, which doesn't fit in with the neighborhood and from my perspective is less than ideal. So then as you deal with the detached garage, you end up, if I don't push it all the way back, so the back corner matches the back corner of the existing detached garage, I would be bisecting my backyard and have no useful yard. So that's sort of the dilemma, right? There's 3 primary design scenarios to evaluate from my perspective into what to do to be able to add a 2-car garage to this piece of property. And if scenario A is to make it attached, you sort of have this Bigfoot house that doesn't align with these little matchbox 800 square foot houses on the street. Or if I detach it and stay out of that back, whatever that rear setback area is, I'd have this detached garage sitting dead center in my backyard, which that's an option I'm just not going to pursue. So this one is sort of, in my view, even though it requires a variance from a design perspective, is the best use of the property. That's how I arrived at this plan after staring at the lot for 8 years, trying to determine what's the optimal use of it. But I'm available for any other questions you have. I think John did a pretty good presentation there. So between that and the request, I think that covers most of it. I heard the question, I believe it was Todd, related to the impervious area. Whether or not the garage is detached or attached, I think I will run into an issue of the impervious area requiring me to install a rain garden. And I've already been in contact with the officials on that, and it's a separate issue from this request, but it does look like I will be required in any event to establish a rain garden, which is I'm fully prepared to do, whether the garage is detached or attached.
Right, thank you very much. Questions for the petitioner? Todd, yes.
Mr. Willard, this is a 2-car garage you're proposing. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, that's correct.
If it were a 1-car garage, would you still need a variance request?
Well, I would, from the perspective of I would still run into that issue of how to optimize the rear property to have enough open space to have a backyard. I mean, it might be easier for John if he pulls up the proposed, overhead on it. It becomes easier to visualize it. Because even if it was a 1-car, I'd have to pull it approximately 20 foot off that back property line, which I would run into that scenario of having bisected my yard, which is a non-starter from my perspective.
Well,
I need somewhere for the kids to hang out.
I wasn't thinking so much about bisecting your yard, sir, as to the problem that I'm having about how much of your rear yard would be paved or asphalted over. And if you obviously reduce the square footage of what you're planning now to be a 2-car garage and reduce it down to 1 car, maybe that would be small enough that you wouldn't have to get a variance. But maybe to be fair, that's a question for John Barrett.
Yeah, from my understanding, maybe John can correct me if I'm wrong here, I don't think this variance is for the impervious area. I think the amount of impervious area you have becomes a question for the folks at the Drain Commission to make sure that you've handled it appropriately during, you know, the civil stage of your construction. I believe this specific variance on the garage is directly related to how much of that rear 20 foot or whatever it is of space that I'm occupying. But maybe I misunderstand the variance request itself.
That's correct. So it's not so much about impervious with the stormwater. It's more about the footprint and the coverage of that area. And so if you see that dashed line, that kind of establishes. Can you see my screen? Everyone, can you see this?
I can, but it looks like you have my little spreadsheet up there calculating the area.
I'm sorry.
That's what I see.
Let me try it again. Do you see the site plan now?
Yes.
Okay. So since they're on a corner lot, this is front yard where this dashed line is. And so the rear yard is just this squared in area back here. That area comprises 768 square feet. If you take 768 square feet and times it by 0.35, they're allowed 268.8 square feet in this back area of coverage. The applicant's proposing 480 square feet because the setback line is 20 feet. So there's a good portion right here, probably about right in here, that if the setback's 20 feet, maybe a third of the garage is outside of the rear setback, so that doesn't count. So yes, the option would be to reduce the variance request to do a one-car garage so you have less footprint in this rear area, or to slide it back further, even instead of 5 feet off the property line, say it's 10 or 12 feet, then you'd have less coverage in this back 20 feet. It'd be slid over here more, but you wouldn't need the variance request. Does that help explain it a little bit better?
And I think if I let that one-car garage, if I did make it a one-car garage and left that far property line that your arrow is on there, I still think I would need the variance, right? Because I would be occupying that too much of that rear area, even with the one-car garage, I believe.
Yeah, it just depends on the size of your one-car garage.
For the record, I drive a Fiesta. I don't know if that helps.
I've got a question for John, actually.
Yes.
So the motion form that I was given here, or that we were sent, everybody was sent, actually says something that's contrary to what you were just laying out. I don't know if you want to pull that up, but it says a variance to allow a 917 square foot two-story detached garage. But then it says the rear open space allows 480 square feet, and the new detached garage will occupy 768 square feet of the rear open space. So it seems different from what you were just laying out on this piece that's up on the screen right now.
So
Am I reading that wrong, or is that?
Maybe the motion might have a typo. It should say that the allowable open space is 268.8 and the applicant's proposing a 480 square foot footprint in the 268. So I apologize if that motion worksheet is incorrect.
Okay.
But it's still requesting a 62.5% variance above and beyond the 35% what is allowed. So it's a variance request of 27.5% coverage in the rear open space. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
I apologize if the motion worksheet is a little, the numbers might have gotten flipped on my motion worksheet. I apologize.
Okay.
But I don't think it. changes it's not in the staff report, so.
Are there any other questions for the petitioner? All right, if there is anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this petition, please call in now. Once you've called in, please raise your hand and wait for staff to call on you.
No callers.
Thank you, Kristen. We are in discussion. Julia.
Sorry, I'm having a little trouble with understanding the space on this one because it seems like a really big yard. Like, I'm not sure why the like the square you were showing as taking the percentage that could be used for building on. Why is it just that square and not, that doesn't seem like the whole yard, that square.
Give me 1 second.
You know,
So
like
rear open space, so you see this 47.77?
Yeah.
So that's the entire width of their lot, but they don't get to use all that. This is front yard. So the rear yard actually starts, right where the garage is being proposed. Because they're on a corner lot. So see all this right here, like this whole plane, that's all front yard. So the rear yard is a setback. The district, it's R1D, so they have a 20-foot setback. If you go from this corner to 20 feet, say it's right there. Let's just say it's right there. And you come down, that's their rear yard. And so in this rear yard space, it can only have 35% coverage. All of this, if he slid it over to over here, it wouldn't count against me. He wouldn't need a variance. He can build more structure in this area. It's just this rear setback area of 20 feet, which is part of rear open space. That's the definition of a rear open space. Your lot width times your setback. So if instead of just having a 5-foot setback, he slid it over maybe 10 or 12 feet to right here and started the garage, he wouldn't need a variance because he's not going to have the 35% coverage, or he's going to meet the 35%. But since this whole area is being occupied more than 35% with a footprint of a detached garage, then he needs this variance. Does that make sense?
Okay, so it's really because it's a corner lot. I mean, I kind of agree with him. It sounds weird to have to shift your garage more into the yard. You usually want the garage at the edge of the yard.
Yeah, he's losing this section right here because of the corner lot. But rear open space it's only 2 figures. It's your setback times your lot width. So your setback in this case is 20 feet times your lot width, which is, he's losing 9 feet. So 47.7 minus 9 comes out to 38.77 times 20, which is the 768 square feet of rear open space. He times 768, 35% of that, he's allowed 268 square feet in this area, and he's wanting to do 480.
The coverage issue isn't for the whole yard, like the entirety of the property. It's just that portion within the setback, which I think is where it gets a little confusing.
Yeah.
But it's just that setback area. It's that rear 20 feet of the property. The rest of it doesn't matter. All this, he could build his setbacks right here. He could build his house all the way up to this back of this garage if he wants.
Okay, I get it now. Thank you.
Yep, the rear open space only applies to the setback, 20 feet times the lot width. So it really is just a small area. They want 35% of coverage in this back area, the ordinance states. So essentially, he wouldn't need a variance if he just slid it over 10 feet right here.
But you need a new curb cut.
Well, he's getting a new curb cut. He's proposing one. He's going to widen it. Yeah, he's going to have to slide it over. He'd have to slide it over and infill over here.
Okay.
All right.
Any other comments or discussion? I'll just say, from my perspective, briefly, I don't so much have an issue with the request for alteration to a non-conforming structure. I think that's relatively straightforward. I have concerns over the variance request. I'm struggling to see what the hardship is. I recognize the need for a garage, and the desire for a garage, but there's a lot of corner properties in the city that would have the same criteria applied to them. There's a lot of houses in the city that don't have a garage. I don't have a garage, so I think there's a way to work around it, either with a small one-car garage if it's really important to them that they have one, or they just have to find a way to keep the garage as part of the building footprint maybe and work within the space that they have. I think there's other options there, so I'm less inclined, I guess, to support the variance request on this one, but I'm open to hearing what other board members have to say, what their thoughts are. Yeah, Todd, go ahead.
I think you hit it on the head, Candace. He could work around it and wouldn't need a variance at all. And for me, without getting all the numbers perfect at this 2.5 hours into the meeting, one of the criteria is this the minimum required to use the property? And a one-car garage would do it. Or as John was indicating, it appears even at this meeting that if he places the garage at a different spot on his property, he doesn't need to come before us. So I'm not in favor of the variance, but the alteration one is easy because it's not pushing any further into the setbacks. So that's how I look at this.
Thank you, Todd. Any other discussion? We ready for the first of two motions?
Sure.
Thank you, Dave.
Let me start with the alteration. ZBA 21006 1135 Burke Avenue. Alteration to a non-conforming structure. The Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants relief from Section 532(2), alteration to a non-conforming structure to allow a new second-story addition to the existing residence and to expand the existing front porch. The porch and second story will not encroach further into the required setbacks.
Thank you, Dave. I have a motion. Do I have support? Support from Chris. Thank you. Todd?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Elizabeth?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Chris? Dave?
DeVarty, yes.
Julia?
Yes.
Charlotte?
Yes.
All right, the request to alter non-conforming structure is approved. Now, do we have a second motion regarding the variance?
I can do that one too.
Thank you, Dave.
Before you read it, so,
I'm taking one line out.
well, I was gonna say, if you just take 480 square feet, put 268.8,
I was just going to take that line out.
okay.
I don't think it's needed. ZBA 21-006 1135 Burke Avenue variance. Based on a finding of fact and in accordance with the established standards for approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants the following variance from Chapter 55 Unified Development Code, Section 516(6)A 2D, accessory uses and structures. A variance to allow a 917 square foot two-story detached garage to occupy 62.5% of the rear open space area. The detached garage is to be built per the submitted plans. So do you see, John, I just took that one sentence out.
Thank you, Dave. We have a motion. Do we have support? Support from Chris. Thank you. Julia?
No.
Charlotte?
No.
Mike?
No.
Dave?
DeVarty, no.
Chris?
No.
I also vote no. Elizabeth?
No.
Nicole?
No.
Todd?
No.
The request for the variance is denied. Moving on to unfinished business, we have none. We've addressed new business. We've addressed all communications we've received. Public comment. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to address the ZBA on any item that was not on the agenda this evening? If so, please call in now. And once you've called in, staff will call on you to speak.
No callers.
Thank you, Kristen. With Chris, did you have a comment, or are you going to make a motion to adjourn?
You're muted.
You're muted, Chris.
I'm so sorry. I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
That sounds fabulous. Thank you, Chris. Do we have support? Support from Charlotte. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Opposed? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice evening.
Good night, everybody.
Thank
Great
you.
to
See everyone next month.
See you, John. Bye-bye.
Bye.